I always believed that strange events started with one simple moment or decision. For me, that moment began on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday evening when I logged into my rideshare app and accepted a new ride request. I had been driving for a rideshare company for several months, mostly to pay the bills while I pursued other dreams, and I was used to the quiet solitude of the road at night. But that night, everything changed in ways I never could have imagined. It was a cool fall evening, the kind where the air is crisp and the city lights cast long, shifting shadows across the pavement. I'd spent the day crisscrossing the city, picking up passengers who either chatted politely or sat silently, lost in their own thoughts. I prided myself on being an attentive driver, always keeping one eye on the road ahead and the other on the rearview mirror. After all, the mirror sometimes told stories that the windshield could not. That Tuesday, I received a ride request from a part of the city I rarely visited. I accepted it without a second thought, not knowing that this ride would be different from all the others. The app directed me to a narrow street lined with old, towering trees whose bare branches scratched at the windows as I drove by. When I arrived at the pickup point, a young man stepped into the car without saying a word. He climbed into the back seat, settled into his seat as if he belonged there, and then silence. His face was calm, his eyes fixed on the phone he held, and not a single word escaped his lips. I noted his silence with mild curiosity, thinking perhaps he was tired from a long day or simply a man of few words. As I pulled away from the curb and merged back onto the busy road, I glanced into my rearview mirror. For a split second, I thought I saw something unusual, a shadow flickering behind the young man. It was as if a face, or at least a pair of eyes, had appeared and then vanished in the blink of an eye. I told myself it was nothing more than a trick of the light or a stray reflection caused by the night. After all, fatigue and the interplay of city lights can easily make your mind play tricks on you. But as the ride continued, an unsettling feeling began to grow inside me. Every time I stole a glance in the mirror, I caught fleeting movements that I couldn't explain. The back seat always seemed to hold something extra, a presence that did not belong solely to the silent young man. I began to notice subtle shifts, small movements that suggested someone or something was there, sitting quietly in the shadows, observing. The sensation was like a cold breath on the back of my neck, and it left me with a prickling sense of unease that I couldn't shake. I tried to rationalize what I was experiencing. Maybe the darkness and the speed at which the scenery blurred were distorting my perception. Perhaps I was simply overthinking, a driver tired from a long day trying to find meaning in the mundane. Yet, deep down, I knew that something was off. The silence in the back seat grew thicker as the ride progressed. I became hyper-aware of every sound inside the car. The steady hum of the engine, the soft tapping of the tires on wet asphalt, even the faint rustle of fabric as the seat adjusted under my constant shifting. In contrast, the back seat was completely devoid of any noise from the passenger, save for the subtle but persistent feeling of being watched. At one point, while driving along a particularly dark stretch of highway, I mustered the courage to speak. "Hello, is everything okay back there?" I asked in a hesitant tone, trying to sound casual even though my voice wavered with uncertainty. The young man remained completely silent, his eyes still glued to his phone. No nod, no acknowledgement, just a profound and unnerving silence. That silence, devoid of any human warmth, made the presence in the back seat feel even more otherworldly. I tried to focus on my driving, steering steadily along the highway as I battled with a growing inner turmoil. With every glance in the mirror, I felt as if I was catching a glimpse of something impossible. A shadow that did not belong solely to my passenger, but rather to the space around him. At times, I saw what looked like a pair of eyes, full of sorrow and warning, that stared back at me for just a moment before vanishing. The sensation was amplified by the quiet hum of the engine and the occasional unexpected cut of sound, as if the world itself had taken a breath. It was as though the normal background noises of the night were punctuated by these brief, haunting moments that froze time for a heartbeat. I began to wonder if this silent presence was a warning or an echo of something far more tragic, a remnant of a past crime or a sorrowful event that had imprinted itself on that stretch of road. Perhaps it was not a threat at all, but rather a desperate message from someone who had long been silenced. Each time I caught a glimpse of those reflective eyes in the mirror, I felt a deep, inexplicable sadness, as if I were witnessing the lingering spirit of a life marked by heartbreak. The route took me further away from the city center and into more isolated areas where the only light came from sporadic street lamps and the dim glow of my dashboard. The solitude of the night only magnified the uncanny feeling inside the car. I found myself playing with different perspectives in my mind, imagining what it would be like to step into the shoes of that silent observer, to see the world from a viewpoint so distant from the bustling life on the road. It was as if I were sharing my car with a ghost, a silent passenger whose presence was felt more than seen, whose warnings were whispered through the delicate interplay of shadows and light. My heart began to pound harder with every mile, and I couldn't help but question my own senses. Was I truly seeing another presence in the car, or was the darkness and fatigue weaving illusions into my mind? Every time I attempted to rationalize the situation, I was met with the stark reality of that mysterious reflection in the mirror. The fear was not the typical kind that urged me to slam on the brakes and flee. It was subtler, a creeping sense of melancholy mixed with a need to understand what was unfolding before me. At one point, while cruising along a rain-slicked road, the atmosphere inside the car shifted noticeably. The normal sounds of the city seemed to fade, and all that remained was the gentle pitter-patter of raindrops against the windshield and the unchanging, steady beat of the engine. In that eerie quiet, I stole another glance into the rearview mirror and saw, clear as day, a pair of eyes that stared directly at me. They were not part of the young man, whose face remained impassive and focused on his phone, but belonged to someone else entirely. The eyes held a depth of sorrow and a silent intensity that made my blood run cold. In that brief moment, I felt as if a silent message had been sent, a warning to remember, to look beyond the surface, and to heed the voices of the past. I forced myself to continue the ride, though my mind was now awash with questions. Who was this silent passenger? What had brought him, or her, for that matter, to this dark stretch of highway? And why did I feel such a deep, inexplicable connection to this presence? The questions swirled inside me, mixing with the soft static of the radio that, for reasons I could not fathom, had begun to play a low, distorted tune on its own. The tune was minimalistic, its sparse notes echoing the emptiness in the back seat. It seemed as if even the car itself was acknowledging that something extraordinary was happening, something that defied the ordinary experience of a late-night ride. I began to recall stories I had once dismissed as mere urban legends, tales of rideshare drivers who had encountered silent, ghostly passengers, stories of mysterious figures who appeared only in the rearview mirror, vanishing as soon as they were noticed. At the time, I had laughed them off, attributing them to overactive imaginations fueled by the loneliness of the road. But now, in the midst of my own unsettling experience, those stories took on a chilling reality. I was beginning to wonder if these tales were not fiction at all, but fragmented memories of real events, echoes of past tragedies that had found their way into the present. As the miles slowly ticked by, I started to feel that the silent presence was not trying to harm me, but to communicate something urgent. In one particularly memorable moment, I remember that the young man in the back seat shifted slightly, and for a split second, the ghostly eyes in the mirror seemed to intensify. It was as though they were trying to convey a message, a plea for recognition, a desperate call to remember something that had long been forgotten. I leaned forward, my heart pounding, and whispered, "I'm here. I'm listening." But the car remained mute save for the soft hum of the engine and the quiet whisper of the rain. I tried to steady my nerves by focusing on the road, yet my mind could not escape the feeling that I was part of a larger, inexplicable narrative. The experience was like watching a movie in slow motion, where every small detail, the reflection in the mirror, the subtle changes in the ambient light, the unexpected cuts in the silence, was loaded with meaning. Each unexpected shift in perspective made me question whether I was witnessing a mere trick of the light or a genuine manifestation of something otherworldly. The boundaries between reality and illusion blurred until I could no longer tell which was which. By the time I reached the young man's destination, a modest apartment building on a quiet street, The strange presence had transformed from a vague unease into a profound, lingering memory. I pulled up in front of the building, my hands trembling slightly as I slowed to a stop. I stole one final glance into the rearview mirror, and for a brief, heart-stopping moment, the ghostly eyes met mine once more. They seemed to plead with me silently, urging me not to forget, not to let the mystery slip away into the darkness of the night. I hesitated before unlocking the door for the passenger, my mind reeling with the weight of what I had experienced. The young man stepped out without a word. I watched him disappear into the shadows, his silhouette melding with the night as if he were never really there at all. I sat there in the driver's seat for a long while afterward, my heart pounding and my thoughts racing. I replayed every detail of the ride, the eerie silence, the fleeting images in the mirror, and the soft, almost imperceptible music on the radio. And I knew, deep in my soul, that I had encountered something far beyond the ordinary. I didn't know then whether the silent passenger was a warning or a remnant of a tragedy from the past, but I was certain that the experience would haunt me for a long time to come. In the days that followed, I became obsessed with understanding what I had witnessed. I started to scour online forums and local news archives for any mention of strange occurrences on that stretch of road. I found snippets of unsolved cases, whispers of a young woman who had vanished on a rainy night, of a tragic event that had left a permanent mark on the community. The details were sparse, fragmented memories from decades past, but they resonated with the feelings I had experienced during that unforgettable ride. It was as if the silent passenger was the lingering echo of that lost soul, a spirit caught between the worlds of the living and the dead, desperate to be remembered. I began to document everything in a small leather-bound notebook that I kept in the glove compartment. Every ride, every unsettling glimpse in the rearview mirror, every inexplicable sound or shift in temperature. I recorded it all in painstaking detail. I wrote down the exact time and location, the weather conditions, and even my own thoughts and feelings as the events unfolded. It was as if I were piecing together a puzzle, trying to assemble the fragments of a story that had been buried in the darkness for far too long. Late one night, after a particularly long shift, I sat in my car parked on a quiet side street. The city around me was silent, the only light coming from distant street lamps and the soft glow of the dashboard. I checked my phone and saw a new text message from an unknown number. The message was simple, just 3 words. Remember me? Those words sent a chill down my spine and made my heart race. I stared at the message, feeling as if it were a direct echo of that fateful ride, a reminder that the mystery was far from over. In the following weeks, more messages arrived, always the same simple phrase. Remember me? Each time, I felt a growing sense of urgency and sadness, as if the voice behind those words was calling out to me from a distant, unreachable past. I couldn't help but wonder if the silent passenger was trying to reach me, if her message was a plea for justice, for recognition, for the truth to be finally acknowledged. The more I searched, the more I became convinced that there was a connection between the silent passenger and an unsolved tragedy. I began to visit the local library and historical society, poring over old newspapers and archived records. I found scattered accounts of a young woman who had disappeared on a stormy night, a case that had been written off as a mere accident by the authorities. But the stories I uncovered hinted at something darker, a sense of injustice, of a life cut short under mysterious circumstances. It was as if her spirit had lingered on, unable to find peace, compelled to make herself known to anyone who would listen. I reached out to a retired detective who had once worked on the case. Over a cup of lukewarm coffee in a small, quiet diner, he recounted the details with a heavy sigh. He spoke of a young woman full of promise who had vanished on a night much like the one I had experienced. Rain pouring down, the city cloaked in shadows, and a sense of foreboding that nothing was as it seemed. He told me that although the case had gone cold, there were always whispers in the department. Rumors that her disappearance was linked to something far more sinister than a simple accident. Her name, he said, was rarely mentioned these days, but in his heart, he believed that her story was one that deserved to be told. That conversation stirred something deep within me. I felt an overwhelming need to honor her memory, to ensure that the silent passenger I had encountered was not forgotten. Every time I saw her eyes in the rearview mirror, I now believed that they were a plea for remembrance, a silent call to bring light to a tragedy that had been left in the shadows. I vowed then that I would not rest until I had done everything in my power to piece together the full story, to give voice to the silent echoes of the past. As the months passed, my nights behind the wheel took on a new meaning. Each ride was no longer just a means to earn a living. It was a journey into the heart of a mystery that spanned decades. I became more observant, more attuned to the slightest variations in the atmosphere of my car. The temperature would sometimes drop suddenly without explanation, and there were moments when the radio would pick up a faint, distorted melody, even though I hadn't touched the controls. It was as if the very fabric of the night was alive with memories and voices from long ago. I started to share my experiences with other drivers, cautiously at first, knowing that many would dismiss them as mere paranoia or the effects of long, lonely hours on the road. Yet, to my surprise, I found that I was not alone. Several fellow drivers confessed to similar encounters. A fleeting reflection in the rearview mirror, a sudden, inexplicable chill, or even the sensation of being silently observed by a presence they could not explain. Together, we formed an informal network, exchanging stories and theories about the mysterious figures that haunted our nightly journeys. Each tale added a new layer to the mystery, reinforcing the idea that the silent passenger was more than a trick of the light. She was a part of the night, a guardian of memories that demanded to be remembered. There were nights when I would drive for hours, my mind wandering between the mundane details of navigation and the profound questions that the mystery raised. I began to understand that every journey had its purpose, and that sometimes the most unremarkable rides held the key to unlocking secrets buried deep within the fabric of time. I learned to listen, to the hum of the engine, to the quiet whispers of the wind, and to the silent language of the rearview mirror. In those moments, I felt a connection not only to the road and the city, but also to something far greater, a tapestry of lost souls and untold stories woven into the very night. I often replayed that first ride in my mind, the way the silence had settled in the back seat, the unexpected glimpse of those sorrowful eyes, and the overwhelming sense that I was not alone. That ride had marked a turning point, a moment when the boundaries between the living and the forgotten blurred into one continuous, haunting melody. It was as if the silent passenger had chosen me to carry her message, to remind the world that some voices, no matter how quiet, must never be silenced. Now every time I drive, I do so with a heightened awareness. I keep my eyes fixed on the road, yes, but I also cast a steady, searching gaze into the rearview mirror, as if expecting that any moment, the silent passenger might appear again with a new message. Sometimes, in the quiet lull between distant headlights and the soft glow of street lamps, I see a shadow flit across the back seat, a fleeting reminder of that lost soul and the tragedy that had bound her to the road. It is in those moments that I feel a profound responsibility, a duty to remember and to honor the past. I know that I may never fully understand what it means to share a ride with a ghost. Perhaps some mysteries are meant to remain partially hidden, lingering in the quiet spaces between our thoughts. Yet, I have come to accept that my encounters with the silent passenger are both a burden and a blessing. A burden of carrying memories too heavy to be forgotten, and a blessing of being entrusted with a story that needs to be told. In the hum of the engine and the soft glow of my dashboard at night, I hear her silent call, a call to remember, to seek truth, and to ensure that the voices of the lost echo into the future. I continue to drive, night after night, with that silent promise in my heart. I have learned that even the quietest presence can have a resounding impact, that every ride is an opportunity to bridge the gap between what is seen and what is felt. And though there are moments when fear and uncertainty try to overtake me, I find solace in the knowledge that I am not alone on this journey. The silent passenger, whether a warning, a ghost of a past crime, or an echo of a tragedy long buried, remains with me, guiding me through the darkness and urging me to remember. This is my story, a tale of a rideshare driver whose life was forever changed by a silent passenger, a mysterious presence in the rearview mirror whose eyes spoke of sorrow, warning, and the need for remembrance. I share it not as a ghost story meant to terrify, but as a reminder that sometimes the most profound truths come to us in the quietest of moments, in the spaces between our busy lives, when we take the time to look beyond the obvious and listen to the whispers of the past. Every ride is now a journey into the unknown, a chance to uncover the hidden layers of our shared history. And while I still feel a chill when I catch a glimpse of those mysterious eyes in the mirror, I also feel a sense of purpose, a determination to piece together the fragments of a story that has haunted these roads for far too long. I drive not just to make a living, but to honor the memory of the silent passenger and the countless voices that have been lost to time. I know that the mystery may never be fully solved. Some nights, as I pull over on quiet streets and the wind whispers through the trees, I wonder if the answers I seek will ever come. But then I remember that sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. The silent passenger has taught me that even in the midst of uncertainty, there is beauty in the quest for truth and hope in the act of remembering. So I keep driving, night after night, with a steady hand on the wheel and a vigilant eye on the mirror. I carry with me the lessons of that unforgettable ride, the echoes of a past that refused to fade away, and a promise to never let the voices of the lost be silenced by time. In the quiet hum of the engine and the soft patter of rain on the windshield, I hear her, always there, always urging me to remember, to seek, and to honor the legacy of those who have been forgotten. This is my promise. I will continue to drive, I will continue to listen, and I will never forget the silent passenger whose sorrowful eyes and unspoken warnings have become a part of who I am. Her presence is a constant reminder that every moment, every ride, and every glance into the rearview mirror holds the potential to reveal a truth that lies just beyond the veil of our everyday lives. In the end, perhaps it is not the destination that matters, but the journey itself, the willingness to confront the unknown, to embrace the mysteries that lie hidden in the shadows, and to find meaning in even the quietest of moments. I drive on, with the memory of that silent night etched into my heart, knowing that as long as I keep my eyes open and my heart receptive, the voices of the past will continue to guide me on my way. And so, whenever I see that subtle flicker in the mirror or feel the inexplicable chill of a presence that defies explanation, I smile softly and whisper a silent thanks. For in those moments, I know that I have been given a rare gift, the chance to connect with a story that spans time and space, to honor a life that was lost, and to keep alive the memory of a silent passenger whose eyes continue to speak a language that goes far beyond words. This is my journey, my quest for understanding in a world that is often too busy to notice the quiet signals that lie beneath the surface. It is a journey of remembrance, of connection, and of the unyielding belief that every life, no matter how briefly touched by tragedy, leaves behind a legacy that deserves to be remembered. I drive on with this conviction in my heart, ready to face whatever surprises the night may bring, and always listening to the silent call that reminds me to never let the past fade away. I share my story now in the hope that others will also listen to the quiet whispers around them, that they will look beyond the immediate and see the deeper layers of meaning hidden in the mundane. For it is in these moments, when the world grows still and the only sound is the beat of our own hearts, that we truly begin to understand that every ride, every glance into the rearview mirror, is a chance to honor the voices of those who came before us, and to carry their stories forward into the light of a new day. This is the legacy of the silent passenger, a gentle, haunting reminder that sometimes the most profound messages come without words, that the eyes can speak volumes, and that even in the darkness, there is a promise of remembrance, hope, and ultimately redemption. And as long as I continue to drive, I will carry that promise with me, forever guided by the silent, sorrowful gaze of the one who rides with me in the rearview mirror. I will remember always